Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. BAM Weather Meteorologist Brett Waltz here with a long-range forecast update. We have a busy forecast today with severe weather in the short term, the biggest heat wave of the season coming as we work into late this weekend and into early next week, spreading from west to east across the United States, and then we'll have an updated look at what to expect as we work into the start of July. And areas expected to see more heavy rain as we work into the latter part of next week. And I wanted to start out this morning first and foremost with the severe weather potential as we work throughout the day today. We already have severe thunderstorm warnings near the area of low pressure in western Illinois right now, just kind of highlighting that even in an environment that does not have a lot of instability to work with, the strength of this storm and the dynamic nature of it will be able to produce severe thunderstorms. And so what does that mean as it taps into a more favorable environment this afternoon? It means that more widespread severe weather potential on the table. And I think the threat is actually maybe increasing a little bit. We're already seeing some sunshine develop in parts of Illinois and Indiana. I think that as this low pushes to the east, it will strengthen a little bit. We have a strong low-level jet that we will be able to tap into. I'd watch out for eastern Illinois and northern and central parts of Indiana for a widespread damaging wind threat. And for areas that have had heavy rain lately, if we turn on the observed rainfall over the past 7 days, you can certainly see parts of central Indiana here have had some very heavy rain over the past 7 days. These areas that also see the damaging wind threat, the soil is being very saturated. It does not take as much wind to cause down trees and power lines. So that is something to keep in mind as well. Let's take a look. This is the latest HRRR model run. This is from the synopticwx.com weather model platform. Would highly recommend it if you watch model data just because of the interactive nature with it. You can draw on it. You can do all kinds of things that you can't do on any of the other platforms. And so your low this morning is sitting right around here. It's going to track north and to the east as we work throughout the day today. What will happen is it will slowly begin to strengthen a little bit. And as that happens and as it taps into a more favorable environment, we're going to start to see a line of storms develop along this boundary. There's a lot of wind energy and a very strong low-level jet pushing in behind this line, which ultimately, as these storms move east, will create kind of this bowing segment. Anytime that you see this bowing segment, it's normally a pretty good indication of damaging wind potential. And so this is by about 4 p.m. Eastern time this afternoon. Let me turn on the time for you in the top right so you can see it a little bit better. Move this over so it's a little bit easier to see. But you can see here 4 p.m., 5 p.m. This will be working from Louisville to Indy, Kokomo, up towards the Chicago metro area with this widespread wind threat. Now, I think that close to the low, if we take a look at our low-level jet here, this is kind of where the strongest jet is going to be. I would be really keeping an eye on this area for enhanced wind damage potential, especially along the north of the I-70 corridor. Would not be shocked if it kind of goes a little bit further to the north into southwest Michigan, northeast Illinois as well, but certainly the dynamics are here for a damaging wind threat. I would not be shocked to see maybe some 70 to locally 80 mile per hour wind gusts as these storms move through this evening. The overall threat, here's what we have. The areas in red, highly likely to see some severe weather with wind gust potential of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts. Orange area, still looking at widespread strong to severe storms. The potential for large hail and a couple of tornadoes as well will be at play. And then if you're in the yellow and the green areas, that's where activity starts to get a little bit lower end in general. Here's a look at the current satellite imagery. You can see the clearing. Already happening across northern Indiana, east central Illinois, kind of right where we have that highest risk area. Starting to see that show up, which will destabilize the atmosphere very quickly as we go throughout the day today. Now, beyond this, guys, the story will turn to heat. Because as we work into late this week, this is temperatures. Let me turn on our records because actually could be some record-breaking warmth across parts of the Central Plains. This is Friday, temperatures up into the 100s across Nebraska, northern Kansas, parts of South Dakota, western Iowa. This spreads east with time. By Saturday, we're working 90s into Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and then we're spreading upper 90s into parts of the Midwest. Getting into the 100s in western Iowa, getting into the upper 90s in parts of southern Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. And as we go into early next week, this is Monday, you're looking at record-breaking heat potential for the eastern Ohio Valley and then up the East Coast with temperatures into the mid to upper 90s for multiple days. Now, what does start to happen is we have a front that moves through parts of the northern United States, and as that happens, we set up a gradient. With that gradient, you're going to see a persistent flow of moisture through here and a lot of thunderstorm activity. There's likely going to be some heavy rain from Nebraska to northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, and into Wisconsin as we work into the start of next week, and then potentially spreading a little bit further southeast as we work into the latter part of next week. If we take a look here, here's a look at the 1 to 8 day time frame. So basically tomorrow through the 25th, 26th of the month. A couple of things. Number one, you can see that stream of moisture. Should be plenty of moisture and continuing to improve drought conditions across parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. But I will note getting increasingly dry across parts of the Ohio Valley, Missouri, into the Tennessee Valley. Now, some of these areas, probably could use the dry time, but there is a narrow corridor kind of through this area in here that has been skipped out on some of the rain. And so that's an area that's going to be drier ahead, and it's also going to be very hot. You're looking at 5 to 10 degrees above normal in terms of temperatures in this same time frame. Now, I do think if we take a look at the medium range, 5 to 10 day time frame out through the 20th of the month, the moisture starts to seep a little bit further to the south and to the east, but I would say that this corridor here needs to be monitored because data's not quite as aggressive with moisture. And certainly very heavy rain signals up here, no doubt about that. Do things verify a little bit more sporadic in here? If that is the case, then there is the risk that these areas could start to dry out pretty quickly because it's also going to be very hot. Here's a look at why I mentioned that. Here's a look at the current soil moisture percentiles, and you can still see, even with some of the rains of late, there's a corridor from southeast Nebraska, northern Missouri, southern Iowa, through northern parts of Illinois and Indiana. There's a corridor in here that has drier than normal soil conditions. Again, should see improvements here in parts of South Dakota, northwest Iowa, southwest Minnesota, but I want to watch this corridor carefully. I do think that there are rains late next week, but confidence is a little bit lower on how heavy and how widespread that those rains are. If they verify a little bit more sporadic in nature, the dryness coming up combined with the heat, the soil moisture conditions will likely worsen. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, again, I do think that the rains can come south. This is just a risk to monitor because if you look at the high pressure, you can see the high pressure here over the Tennessee Valley and the Mid-Atlantic. It starts to weaken, and as that happens, you start to develop this northwest flow. Now, when you get northwest flow, things can be a little bit messier in nature, but there's a front in here too. And so I would imagine that late week 2, we're seeing moisture opportunities in here. And so I don't think we're into a red flag scenario yet, but I do think that the medium to the extended range period in terms of moisture is worth monitoring in those drier soil moisture areas. Now, in terms of July, getting into the forecast in July, right now the pattern driver that I think is driving this hotter weather is our global winds. They're dropping notably negative, and in fact, this particular model, the EPS, has been too positive. We never actually dipped negative. It's been consistently a half a point to a full point too high with the global winds, which is why I think that we've trended warmer than what data had initially indicated in the eastern part of the country. What does that mean ahead? Well, it means that the heat in general likely continues. We likely continue to see bouts of it out through the end of June, and I would anticipate probably into the start of July as well before we start to see a change. Data trying to weaken this down the road. What does that mean? Well, if we take a look at some of the top analogs that had this progression, you have years like 2117, 2011 has been one that's been very good the last couple of weeks, 2007 and 2000. Here's what they looked like for June. Here's where we've been month to date and what we're expecting ahead. You mix these two together, they match up pretty well. Not perfect, you're never going to be perfect, but it matches up pretty well to what those analogs would have suggested for June. So we roll that forward. Here's a look at precip. It's done pretty well here as well. Might be a little bit too dry in the plains, but all things considered, it's not too bad. We roll that forward into July. It would indicate that the core of the heat that's now east will start to pull west. I think the biggest question is how fast does that progression happen? Here's a look at precip, also a little bit drier in the central US as well. The key is just about how fast it happens. Right now, if you take a look at the 10 to 20 day forecast from the CFS, it keeps the warmth east for a time, really out through the first week of July. I don't disagree with that because I think we have lingering impacts of our weaker global winds into the start of July. So first week of July, I do think that there can still be some heat in the ag belt, and maybe especially in the eastern ag belt. So more heat waves possible into early July. What starts to happen though, if we take a look at this, is that warmth starts to pull back, second week of July and beyond, and you start to transition into more of this type of an idea, which is more like what our weeks 3 and 4 forecast was yesterday. And so it may be a warmer start to weeks 3 and 4, warmer start to July, and then east beginning to moderate a little bit with time, with the core of the heat setting up more so in the north central part of the country. What does that mean for precip? Well, it means that the first week of July probably have some of this northwest flow, storm cluster potential, could be severe weather potential through here, maybe a little bit drier south and southwest in this particular case. And so that's kind of where we are at right now. Again, here are the analogs, how things likely evolve for July in terms of precip. Still matches our July outlook pretty well. Not a major concern in terms of extended dryness in this area, but it is messy. It is a messy type of a setup. And even I would say into the central plains, there are some, monsoonal indications that there could be some moisture in here. So it's not a bone dry scenario by any means, regardless. And so that's kind of where we are at with things right now. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day.